Hello everyone, PallyTime here, and welcome back to Baldur's Gate 3. In today's video, I'm going to share with you what I believe is truly one of the strongest builds in the entire game, and an extremely thematic build if you happen to have Lae'zel in your party. And let's just say maybe you don't see eye to eye with Flacketh anymore. This is the Oath of Vengeance, Pact of the Blade, Warlock Multiclass, with a little bit of fighter thrown in there as well. It is capable of some insane damage in combat, but also utility in just about every way you can think of. I'll show you exactly what I mean in just a moment. I played this build through my most recent playthrough of the game, our Githyanki run, and we've managed to optimize it even more since then. However, if you are playing on Honor mode, I wanted you to be warned. The newest, most difficult version of the game has been added since then, and it has tweaked how one of the mechanics work on that difficulty only. If you're not playing on Honor mode, that doesn't matter at all to you. But make sure you're paying attention when we're talking about leveling. I do find it incredibly impressive in just how many varied situations this build can absolutely thrive in. But I'm going to stop just talking about it, and I'm going to show you guys a ton of examples right now. If you guys enjoyed today's video, please be sure to hit that thumbs up button. It takes a ton of time to put episodes like this together, and I hope you guys genuinely enjoy the show and learn something about the game. Speaking of learning, if you have anything you would change, let me know down in the comments. I'm always looking for new perspectives and new ways of thinking about builds, and the easiest way to do that is to hear from you guys. Thank you so much for being here, and let's jump into the video. Let's say you find yourself in a situation where you are completely surrounded by enemies. Other characters may struggle in this spot, but we have the perfect answer with our Warlock spell, Darkness. And with our Devil Sight, even though we are inside of magical darkness, Lae'zel is able to see just fine in this scenario. And what you know, we start off combat with a SMITE crit, completely killing an enemy in a single swing. While we are inside of our darkness, we do not receive any penalties. However, most enemies in the game will struggle inside of this environment. We can action surge on this first turn and continue to just cleave our way through every single enemy in our path. And if we do kill a target, we get our Great Weapon Master bonus attack, so we can keep on swinging even more. When we're done, retreat back into the darkness and hide. Most enemies will just end their turn without even being able to attack. Others might try to throw some stuff into the clouds, but everyone's chance of hitting you is severely limited. And once it gets back around to our turn, we just pick up right where we left off. Don't forget to use your bonus swings from Great Weapon Master. If you opt to take the alert feat, in scenarios where you're being ambushed, your character will often end up going first. And in that scenario, you can remove the advantage that the enemies have by concentrating on the spell slow. This is given to us once again through our Warlock levels, and we are able to place this on a wide variety of targets, not only limiting their movement, but limiting the number of actions that they can take per turn. By doing this, not only are we making ourselves much safer, we're also protecting our team from what would be a surprise round or an attack coming in from a bunch of enemies before our team can act. It really de-escalates this situation in yet another way. Once again, because slow is a concentration, it gives us bonus damage with our rings as we continue to cleave through our enemies. Let's take a look at an opposite scenario where we are at range and want to deal damage from afar. We can easily do that by casting Hex, another Warlock spell, adding an extra 1d6 onto each of our attacks onto an enemy. If we put that onto someone and then fire off an Eldritch Blast, Eldritch Blast has multiple attacks as you continue to level up. Right now, I can shoot 3 beams onto an enemy. If all of these beams connect, we can do a massive amount of damage. As you can see, we took this guy down from 62 HP to 17, and that was kind of on the lower end. I've seen it do much better than that. Action Surging with our fighter levels allows us to fire off another Eldritch Blast, now taking down the target from afar. And because we killed him, we get a free recast, only using our bonus action to reapply Hex to another target. So we can continue this cycle and take these guys down from afar, from complete safety way over here. But what if you're like, no, bro, I'm not trying to attack from range. I want to get in there. You'll be happy to know mobility is not an issue, especially if you're playing as a Githyanki. You get Psionic Jump, a free Misty Step on a long rest, a free Fly on a long rest. We also gain Misty Step as a Warlock spell. You can get Gaseous Form and move around with that. You can get Flight as a Warlock spell. It's really not difficult at all to move exactly where you were trying to be and position exactly where you want to. Now, let's not forget about some of the insanely good things we get from Paladin as well. If you want to be extra defensive, Shield of Faith is a concentration spell that gives us an additional 2 AC at the cost of 1 spell slot. Because we're concentrating, we're also increasing our damage with our ring, and we can increase our AC even further by then just casting Mirror Image. This lets us hit some pretty alarming highs, 35 AC right now. Of course, that will fall as we lose these images. Defense is not our only strength. We can also do an alarming amount of damage with smites. I'm going to swap my concentration out for this Hex, once again using a level 1 spell slot. And now I will continue to expend those spell slots in return for massive, massive smite damage. One of the most beautiful things about this too is we can upcast these smites with our Warlock spell slots to increase the damage even more. If we crit, it gets even more ridiculous. Let's go ahead and just send it on the nearest guard next to us. And as you can see, they have been absolutely obliterated by the amount of damage that we pushed out. That is just one of the smites that I can do on this turn. We can continue the aggression against the next enemy, and we can keep expending these spell slots to keep pushing this damage out, even action surging with our fighter levels, and keep exchanging these spell slots for massive damage increases. If there is a high health target that you want to take down, Paladin can put them down faster than just about any other class with this strategy. Expending spell slots like that can be very costly. Normally, this would leave Paladins high and dry until the very next long rest. However, with this setup, we're utilizing our Warlock short rest spell replenish to be able to fund our smites even longer, meaning we can smite more per day, and that's always a good thing. And that's not even the end of the utility that we bring. We can bring Aid Upcast as a level 3 spell, which is going to increase our HP by 10 per day. We can provide a ton of healing with our Lay on Hands throughout an adventuring day. And just on a whim, we can decide, you know what, I want to have advantage on attacks right now with our Channel Oath charge. Also, when you consider that our character is going to have around 20 charisma, depending on the set of gear that you go for and the feats that you decide to take, that charisma is going to make our social situations easier. That on top of our huge bonuses to intimidation and persuasion mean you're going to be able to talk yourself into or get yourself out of most situations in the game. That charisma scaling our damage is just such a nice icing on top. I know I've rambled. I know this is a long segment just showing what we can do, but it's such an amazing setup, and I hope you guys are encouraged to try it. Starting at level 1, we're going to begin the game as Paladin, specifically with the Oath of Vengeance subclass. This is going to give us increased radiant damage with our channel Oath charge, and as we already hinted to in the future, give us advantage whenever we feel like having it. You do have to live by certain tenets as a Paladin, so make sure you don't go too off the rails. By the way, any of these other subclasses would work just fine too if you feel like their flavor fits your style of character more. For our abilities, we dump our strength at the beginning of the game, which means we are going to want to utilize the Elixirs of Hill Giant Strength as well as Cloud Giant Strength if you can manage to find them early on. Eventually, our Charisma will take over for our main damage modifier, but until then, Strength will help out. Dexterity at 14 will give us decent initiative. I recommend picking up Alert later on to give us even better initiative, but that's optional, and we'll get to that when we do. Constitution with a +1 is going to even out at 16, and this will help us with our concentration checks, as we do need to maintain that concentration to get damage increases. Totally dumping intelligence and going with 10 wisdom. For our proficiencies, I would say intimidation and persuasion are the most important ones because they lean so heavily into charisma. At level 2 Paladin, we're going to gain more spell slots as well as the ability to finally start casting Divine Smite. For your fighting style, I would highly recommend Great Weapon Fighting. And remember, as a Paladin, you can just prepare your spells for the day. You don't have to worry about memorizing or forgetting spells somewhere down the line. I would recommend something like this. Shield of Faith as a more defense-focused concentration, Bless as an offense-focused concentration, Thunderous Smite, which gives you the opportunity to knock an enemy prone to give yourself advantage, Cure Wounds as an emergency heal, and Heroism to gain temporary hit points, once again a more defense-focused concentration, if those float your boat. If not, take anything that you would like here. I think you'll be doing just fine. At level 3, we continue with Paladin, gaining Divine Health. The Divine Health magic flowing through you prevents diseases from affecting you. We also gain Abjure Enemy and Vow of Enmity, that advantage on attack rolls that I was talking about with your channel Oath charge. You don't have to wait long for that. We also gain access to 2 more spells, Bane and Hunter's Mark. Hunter's Mark works pretty similar to our Warlock Hex, so if you want to start using a similar spell early, pick this one up. Now at level 4, we unlock the Lay on Hands charge, giving us the ability to heal either ourselves or our allies. We also gain access to our very first feat. I'd highly recommend picking up Great Weapon Master. Great Weapon Master allows you to make another melee attack on your turn if you land a critical hit or kill an enemy with a melee weapon attack. There's a passive component of this as well that you can toggle on and off. While it's on, you're going to have a -5 on attack rolls, making it harder to hit enemies. But when you do, you're going to deal 10 additional damage. It's usually a benefit to have that negative bonus on because the damage payoff is worth it. However, if you find you're missing against certain enemies with high AC, you can turn off the negative bonus and still maintain the benefit of getting additional attacks on crits and kills. It is so very good. Now at level 5 as a Paladin, this will be our final level that we're taking with Paladin. We gain new class features, increased level 1 spell slots, as well as finally level 2 spell slots. In addition to that extra attack, we're now swinging twice per turn. This means you can start upcasting your smites twice per turn to level 2 spell slots if you'd like to at this point. That is a very big damage increase. We also gain new level 2 spells, as well as Misty Step, not only from our Oath spells, but from our race if you are going Githyanki. This is a big level up. Next, instead of continuing into Paladin, we're going to swap over and level Warlock at character level 6. This is going to give us access to Warlock cantrips. We're going to want to make sure we pick up Eldritch Blast. That's going to be our bread and butter ranged ability, as well as Blade Ward is what I would recommend here, just to decrease the amount of incoming damage against your character. For the subclass, I genuinely feel like any of these would be totally fine. I'm a big fan of the Great Old One because if we do land critical hits against our enemies, they could become frightened and just stand there cowering in fear. That seems so appropriate. For spells, you're definitely going to want to pick up Hex here, and I'd probably recommend Hellish Rebuke as your second Warlock spell. Next at level 7, we become a Warlock level 2. Don't forget, as you're gaining more and more of these Warlock spell slots, that these come back on short rests. Use them for your smites. At this level range, we are going to gain a new spell. I recommend probably picking up Arms of Hadar or Armor of Agathis, depending on what you fancy. We also get some Eldritch invocations. We definitely want to pick up Agonizing Blast. This is going to add our Charisma modifier onto our Eldritch Blast damage. Soon we'll be adding that Charisma modifier onto our melee attacks as well, so we can double dip on both ends. Next up, if you like the playstyle of hiding inside of the darkness, you definitely want Devil Sight. You can see normally in darkness, both magical and non-magical, to a distance of 80 feet. At level 8, we become Warlock level 3. We gain access to level 2 spells, in which we're going to want to pick up Darkness right away. And for our Pact boon, we picked Pact of the Blade. This is going to allow us to bind our main hand weapon. Its damage becomes magical, you cannot drop it or throw it, and you become proficient if you weren't with it already. We can now summon our weapon to us if it ever leaves our hand, and it uses our spell casting ability modifier, which in our case is our Charisma. Next at level 9, we become Warlock level 4. We gain access to a new cantrip, and I would recommend either picking up Poison Spray for a little bit of an AoE, or Mage Hand. If you are playing as a Githyanki, you get a Mage Hand once a day. This would allow you to use it more than that. For our spells, I would recommend picking up Mirror Image here for a more tanky option. You could do Invisibility for some utility, some Area Denial with Cloud Daggers. Really, the option is up to you. I really value Mirror Image. For our next feat, I would recommend picking up Alert, but there are some other really good options here as well. Alert would allow you to go first in initiative more often than not, and your character cannot be surprised. If your party is ever ambushed, this gives you the perfect opportunity to disrupt the enemy's plans before they can strike at your party. You could take an ability improvement, increasing your Charisma up to 19. If you take the hair from the hag back in Act 1 and get that bonus, you can grab one more Charisma and you would be at an even 20 at this point, which would also be quite strong. There's a hat in Act 3 that would allow you to pump your Charisma up to 22, and that is definitely a valid way of doing things. One more option you might want to consider is picking up something like Warcaster, which would allow you to have advantage on your concentration checks. Because this build utilizes our concentration so much and double dips to get extra damage out of them, maintaining concentrations can be very valuable. Those are the three I would consider the most. I find Alert to be the most valuable, just because our dexterity really isn't on the high side. It helps out a ton with initiative. Remember earlier when I said you're going to need to pay attention to leveling up if you are playing on Honor mode? Well, as we become level 10, we are a 5 Paladin, 5 Warlock. As we hit this, we gain Deepened Pact. Pact of the Blade now gives us an additional attack because we have deepened this connection. However, in Rules as Written in D&D, this would not work with the extra attack that we've already gotten from Paladin. In Baldur's Gate 3, however, this does give us a third attack on our turn. That is, of course, if you are not playing Honor mode. With the release of the hardest difficulty of the game, that is the only exception to this Deepened Pact adding in that third swing. If you are playing on Honor mode, you may want to consider just taking more levels on Paladin and skipping this class feature entirely. For anyone else, I know not a ton of people play on Honor mode, this is a phenomenal pickup and will give you a big increase in damage. Larian didn't want to remove this from the game, they just wanted to make Honor mode even more difficult. We also gain access to new spells here. There are some great ones like Hunger of Hadar, Gaseous Form, as well as Grant Flight, which increases our mobility by a ton. I'm a fan of Gaseous Form myself, and for our Eldritch evocations, I'm a big fan of picking up Mire of the Mind here, which is going to give us slow that we can use in our Warlock spell slots. Slow can be incredibly strong, especially comboed with Alert that we picked up earlier. I do think at this level I would go ahead and swap out Arms of Hadar for another spell slot. Something like Hunger of Hadar not only has great area denial, but also limits vision as well. Now, as our character becomes level 11, this is when I like to go back to the roots of Lae'zel. She began the game as a fighter, so let's make her a fighter again. She's going to gain Action Surge at this level, which is going to be a small heal and an additional fighting style. Remember, we already have great weapon fighting. We can focus on defensive fighting to increase our armor class by 1 for free. Then as we hit the max level of the game, we become a Paladin 5, Warlock 5, Fighter 2, giving us access to Action Surge, allowing us to do an insane amount of attacks per turn. And another great synergy, Action Surge comes back on a short rest for fighters, meaning we get our spell slots from Warlock back at the same time, and we can start smiting all over again. I want to stress that it is so very important that at the start of every day after long resting, that you bind your Pact weapon. Just by clicking on this action and then clicking on yourself. It's going to last until long rest, but you won't get that additional Pact weapon swing unless you do this. And your weapon will not scale with your charisma unless you do this. I've forgotten so many times. Do not be like me. All right, I know this video is kind of long because I was gushing about how good the build is for like 20 minutes, but I want to go over some gearing very quickly. First, weapon you can get at the start of the game is the Everburn Blade. This is dropped by the Demon General, who's fighting the Mind Flayers on the starting Nautiloid. Easiest way to get this is to get Shadowheart into your party and have her use the spell Command. It's in your spell book. Tell the guy to drop his weapon. Hopefully he does, and you can snag it. If you don't grab this, Lae'zel's starting weapon is pretty good for fighters, and if you're not playing with Lae'zel, you could take it away from her. Now, at the start of the game, it's totally okay if you don't feel like dumping your strength, like what I recommended early on. However, I have found out a new method, thanks to you guys in the comments, for stacking Elixirs of Hill Giant Strength. So if you do want to jump your strength down to 8 and then chug potions to bring your strength back up to 21, here's a very easy way of doing it. I just arrived in the Grove for the first time, and my party is sitting here at level 3 with a level up. That level up can be used to refresh the inventory of vendors. And it just so happens that there's a certain apothecary in town that has a very healthy stock of potions. The only problem I have with this strategy is I just sold everything I've picked up at this point in the game, and all I got was 322 gold from it. But if you want to invest early in Elixirs of Hill Giant Strength, you can do that right here. And as you barter for them, hopefully you make a little bit of gold in the process. Because you can reset this inventory by simply leveling up a character. And because we have 4 members in our party, that means we can reset the inventory of Auntie Ethel 4 times, potentially allowing us to stock up on a ton of these elixirs right at the very beginning of the game, if money allows. You can also do this the same way I've been showing in the last few videos, which is going back to your camp, going to sleep, and then just not using any food for a partial rest. That also resets the inventory. The advantage of doing this method is that you don't advance the story by sleeping. Way down in the Underdark, there is a very important vendor. This is Dareth Bonecloak. We've shown her off in videos before. She's actually the vendor I usually buy my Elixirs of Hill Giant Strength from. That's not why we're here today, though. We're here to pick up the Caustic Band. Your weapon attacks also deal 2 acid damage. That's every swing we're adding in more damage, and that adds up a lot over time. Clear across the water on the other side of the Underdark, near the Adamantine Forge, I am just northeast of the Ancient Forge waypoint. Right here on the ground will be a Splint mold. Bring that mold down the stairs to the southeast and gather the ore on the far side of the chamber. Using the forge below, you can make this Adamantine Splint armor. Extremely good heavy armor that could last you all the way to Act 3. Depending on how the Druid conflict went in your game, you may not have seen eye to eye with Kaga either. If you did take her down, she has the Broodmother's Revenge on her corpse. That adds in an extra 1d6 poison damage. I have heard that this is a tooltip error and it's only a 1d4, but that still is extra damage with each attack. Now, you can get the same effect from coating your weapon or from using other poisons, but for just chugging a potion or using a bonus action healing word from another character, free damage is free damage. Make sure at some point before you leave the act that you go and attack Auntie Ethel down in her lair. Make sure you don't kill her too fast, though. Now, make sure you don't kill her, and make sure she gets a turn. So 17 HP should do it.
Wait! Wait just a tick!
This is perfect.
What?
It may not feel very good, but you want to tell her to keep the girl, and I'll take the power.
Wise choice. Here.
She basically throws a piece of her scalp onto the ground, and you can decide what you want this scalp to give you. For us, we want a +1 bonus to our charisma. This will give us an even number later and make it much easier to hit that even 20 in the late game. In order to get some of the items we need in Act 2, we need to make sure that the goblins are not successful inside Act 1. That does mean killing all of the goblin leaders. While you're in here, though, make sure you loot the treasure room behind Drawer Ragsglin. Inside, you will find a piece of infernal iron. We need this for a blacksmith in Act 2, but we're also going to need to find a couple more pieces. Next, we're going to go to the Blighted Village and make our way to the building across the street from the teleporter.
Proceed.
Inside, there are some webs currently blocking a hole that leads down deeper into the building. You could also pick the lock on the door to get in here, but my Lae'zel doesn't really have that skill in her wheelhouse. As you leap down into the basement, there's going to be a ladder nearby with a chest at the top of it. Inside that chest, we find our second piece of infernal iron. Northwest of Joaquin's Rest Teleport, where the fire is located on the north side of Act 1, there is a secluded guild of thieves that have an operation, all working out of the basement of this building. This cave system is massive, and depending on how your introduction goes, they could be very hostile or very friendly. Either way, if you make your way far to the north side of the cave, just behind this locked door, there is one more piece of infernal iron that you need to get your hands on. Don't worry, this is all worth it once we get to Act 2. On the way to Act 2, our party stopped by Kresh Yelek inside of the Rosimorn Monastery. After the main fight in the final room, there's an elegant chest, and inside that elegant chest, we finally get this strange conduit ring. While concentrating on spells, the wearer's weapon deals an additional 1 to 4 psychic damage, something we try to capitalize on for the rest of the build. After the fight in the Northern Chamber, as our party turns to leave, depending on the outcome of this area, you may be ambushed once again. This time by Kithrak Therazin here. They are wielding the Soulbreaker Greatsword. If you are using Lae'zel or playing a Githyanki, this is finally an upgrade over the Everburn blade from the Nautiloid. As soon as you make it to Act 2, go to Last Light Inn. Quartermaster Tally will sell you an upgrade immediately, the Cloak of Protection, increasing your AC by 1 and your saving throws by 1, bringing your AC up to 19. From there, enter the main tavern area, and if everything went well with Roland back at the Druid Grove, you should see Mattis right here as a vendor. Mattis will sell you the evasive shoes, increasing your acrobatics and AC by 1. Suddenly, Lae'zel has 20 AC to her name. But then we're not done. Our third upgrade from this area comes from Damon, the blacksmith working over here by the stables. If you give him the infernal iron that we collected in Act 1, he will make 3 pieces of gear. The main one that we are interested in are the Flawed Helldusk gloves, which are going to add yet another source of damage onto each of our attacks, a 1d4 bonus fire damage. Inside of the Gauntlet of Shar, there is a silent library trial, and if you can identify the right book and put it upon this pedestal, a secret door will open back here. There are 2 items waiting for us, but the one we are interested in is the Dark Justiciar helmet. While obscured, the number you need to roll a critical hit when attacking is reduced by 1. This is an effect we can continue to stack. And if you enjoy the playstyle of casting darkness and then attacking from inside it, well, guess what? You're obscured. Here's the thing about gearing up a Githyanki like this in Act 3. Almost as soon as you arrive, you can go collect the Silver Sword of the Astral Plane. You only have to do one thing, and I think it is more than worth it. When this weapon is wielded by a Githyanki, it deals 1d6 additional damage. And a Githyanki holding this weapon has advantage on intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws. On top of that, resistance to psychic damage, and they cannot be charmed. This is absolutely an incredible weapon. You're going to want to make this your Pact weapon as soon as possible if you're following along with a character like Lae'zel. In order to get the Githyanki weapon, the Silver Sword, all you have to do is make your way into Sharess's Caress. We have to make a deal with Raphael. He's located up on the 3rd floor in the room called the Devil's Den. When you arrive, he will be talking to a familiar Githyanki who will plead with you that you take the deal from Raphael. If you sign the contract, our Githyanki friend will be so relieved that they give you their prized weapon, and it is incredible. However, if you are not a Githyanki, I highly recommend snooping around for Baldurin's Giant Slayer before the end of the game. I'm not going to spoil where this is, but I will give you at least the breadcrumbs to start searching for it in this guide. Next, we're going to want to make our way over to Sorcerer's Sundries. If we take a look at the map, this is in Baldur's Gate proper, just west of the Basilisk Gate, near the Lower City Central Wall, just in case you've never been here before. If we talk to the projection, he is a vendor here who sells all kinds of goods. This helmet is called Birthright, and it just increases our charisma by 2. With the way that we have our stats set up right now, this will even us out at a nice even 20 and give us some pretty good bonuses on our charisma modifier. Depending on what you did with your feats, you could theoretically increase your charisma to 22 with this piece of gear. Now, depending on how your game has played out so far, will change who actually sells this hat here at Sorcerer's Sundries. For me, it was this illusion guy. For you, it might be a familiar wizard that we talked to back at the Grove. Poke around if you don't see it right away. To ramp up what I would consider to be the most balanced build for this setup, you're going to need to make your way into the Devil's Fee, just north of Sorcerer's Sundries. In here, there is a way to reach the House of Hope, to go fight Raphael, and to break your contract that you signed with him earlier. The Helldusk gloves can be found on the Incubus inside of the House of Hope's northern quarter. This is a direct upgrade over what Damon crafted for us in Act 2. The Amulet of Greater Health is an incredible upgrade for our necklace slot. It will increase our Constitution score to 23, making us significantly tankier, But that increase in Constitution is also going to help us on our Constitution saving throws, which we also have advantage on now, by the way. Because of the synergy with us holding concentrations and getting extra damage out of the strange Conduit ring, this is one of the best items we could have. It is located in the western corridor inside of the House of Hope. And finally, swapping out our chest piece, the Helldusk armor is dropped by the man of the hour himself, Raphael. If you can defeat him, you will be rewarded with an incredible piece of gear. We are already proficient with heavy armor, so the Helldusk bonus at the top is not really benefiting us. However, when you succeed a saving throw, the person who cast against you will begin to burn. You also have resistance to fire damage and cannot be burned. On top of that, a fantastic 21 AC and the ability to fly on a long rest. It is an incredible piece of gear. This might surprise you, but somewhere in Baldur's Gate, there's a murder tribunal. Like, this city is not as safe as it seems. If you manage to find it somehow and clear out the leader of the organization, you will get Serevok's horned helmet. Not only is this going to give you dark vision like you already have, but it's going to give you an improvement on the critical hit bonus that we got from the Justiciar helmet from earlier. We no longer need to be obscured, we just always have a -1 requirement to land a critical hit. We also can't be frightened and get even more bonuses on our Constitution saving throws. Somewhere else in the city, there's also a hive of thieves that had formed an organized guild of crime. As if that wasn't bad enough, they have children doing their dirty work. We need to talk to one of them, Sticky Dondo right here. He has the Shade Slayer cloak. While hiding, the number you need to roll a critical hit while attacking is reduced by 1. I'm sure you can see where we're going with this by now. Then if we make our way over to the lower city's central wall, just west of Sorcerer's Sundries, there are a couple of merchants that set up shop right over here under these tents. Fitz the Firecracker sells a ranged weapon we are very interested in for this build. The Deadshot Bow lowers the number you need to roll a critical hit by 1. With the crit setup, you would also want to use these elixirs as well, which reduce the number needed to score a critical hit by 1 more. If we add all this up, we have -1, -2, -3, -4 while sneaking. So if we open up combat by setting up a darkness and then sneaking inside of it, we can then begin by casting a level 3 smite on the nearest enemy and hoping that we get a critical hit. If we do, keep in mind a 16 and up for us right now is a critical hit. The likelihood of us one-shotting that enemy is extremely high. Now, that's only going to be on the first attack because sneaking isn't something that we're going to be able to reliably do as this character. But when you do get critical hits with this setup, enemies are just going to melt. Now, as far as which of the 2 late game variants I prefer, I enjoy having the Birthright equipped, not only for the more consistent damage, as our charisma modifier is adding on to each swing we hit an enemy with. I think the added charisma helps a ton with social situations. However, that doesn't mean you can't equip the Deadshot and still use Elixirs of Viciousness to make those critical hits just a little bit more common. What you're looking at right here is my preferred setup for this character, and I had so much fun playing through the entirety of the game with it. Thank you guys so much for being here. If you made it to the end of the video, you're an absolute legend. I know this one went on forever. I've literally been working on it for 12 hours. I got really rambly, like in weird spots. I'm sorry. I did the best that I could with this. And I sincerely do hope that it was helpful. We do have more guides on the channel if you want to know how to make the best tavern brawler monk possible in the game. just like this handsome lad right here that we're running down the hill towards. Then make sure you check out our Tavern Brawler Monk guide, which should be popping up on the screen right about now. Thank you guys so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you again very soon.